My smartphone says that it's 7 o'clock, so if you'll stand with me and say the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you for coming out this evening. We do have a pretty full agenda tonight. It may not be a 20-minute council meeting. There will be opportunity for public comment when that time comes. I'll mention that to you. And if you would, as per our suggestions there, that you would keep public comment to 3 minutes, that would be great. We want your comments. We're glad you're here. And actually right now, is there any public comment on any of the agenda items? The agenda is out on that front desk. Anything that you know we're dealing with that you would like to have public comment about now? There will be an opportunity at the end of the business as well. Any public comment on any agenda items? We will be talking about the Llewellyn Street subdivision tonight, so if anyone has any public comment on that right now, we would take that.
You asked about the subdivision?
Mm-hmm.
I have one comment.
Okay. Go ahead if you'd stand and come forward. And
Oh, I have to come forward?
would you? Just so we can see you. And
Just so you can see. I don't want a mask. I only had one comment about the variance that might be issued or approved. Is when you start issuing variances for one, you have to start issuing variances for all projects that may come up later on. And so just to consider that going forward. And also, I'm not against the development at all. I just want it to be right, and done according to the city, terms and everything. That's it.
very good. Thank you, Brooke. I also have a public comment on the subdivision that I'll go ahead and read when we come to that business. I think for right now, if there's no other public comment, we'll take a look at our minutes and we would take a vote if you've looked at the minutes from last meeting.
I'll move that we accept the minutes from the last meeting as presented.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded that we accept the minutes as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Journal voucher report, we don't have one. So we'll move on to treasurer's report. Treasurer's report?
I move that we approve the treasurer's report as presented.
Second. JD second.
Moved and seconded that we accept treasurer's report as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Claims and payroll?
I'll move that we accept claims and payroll as presented.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we accept claims and payroll as presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. I guess that's why
It's
they call it
working.
an owl, huh? We have 3 judges' reports in your packets. I'll go ahead and read that off. We'll start with February and work backwards. February, number of new cases for the month was 61. Total number of pending cases 53. Total number of disposed cases 50. Total number of active warrants is 109. Funds paid to the town of Plains were $4,736. And for January, new cases were 49, pending cases 39, number of disposed cases were 50, number of active warrants 112, funds paid to the town of Plains 4,290. And December, new cases 25, pending cases 47, disposed cases 67, total number of active warrants 112, funds paid to the town of Plains for $3,378.77. I'm going to keep my mayor's report relatively brief. Most of you know the business going on in the town with the fire department project, the three-phase repair of the fire hall coming along good. We're still in phase 2 on that. Water pumped last month was 3,693 gallons. We sold 2,409 gallons. If you did fast math on that, that's a loss of 35%. So there's got to be some water leaks somewhere around town. So kind of be keeping an eye on that. If you know, look in your yard or watch out for sinkholes or whatever. We are losing a little bit of water right now. We know where some of those leaks are again, and we're getting weather now where we can hopefully start digging and doing some repair on that, or people in their private on their private land have some water leaks. So something to keep an eye on. Fun news: the Plains High School shop class. Would you guys, gentlemen from the high school, would you stand up and introduce yourselves? Are you the ones that built this?
I did.
Pretty much. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I'm Zayden Allen. I'm a senior at Plains High School, and I designed and built the
Horse.
metal model there.
My name is Pepper Rurai, and I was kind of just emotional support when you showed me.
The hype man?
I don't know.
Looks great.
So this is fun. This is a 1 to 5 kind of 1/5 model of what the idea is to replace the sickly horses on the Greenway. So we're kind of working with the Parks and Recreation Committee and with Kyle at the school, at the shop, with the shop class, and this is their design. So after the meeting, come on up and take a look at that. That looks fun. It looks like it's a great idea. So thank you for the work you've put in that and the work you're planning to do. It does.
And it looks like a
And it looks like a horse.
real horse. Yeah,
Good work,
the
guys.
reality of it's.
So we're looking forward to that. This is something hopefully we can get out in the community, maybe get some financial support, maybe some donations to build this, and maybe a herd to follow it. So good work. I'm just going to throw this out. We also have another council project this month. If y'all on the council would read chapter 10 of our ordinance book, and any questions or concerns that you have about that, take your highlighter to it. Looking for things like readability and whether it's an ordinance that needs to be relooked at, considered. As you know, I'm giving you little chunks of the ordinance to read on a monthly basis, just so that we're all kind of familiar with it. So that's not a real big chunk, but if you'll do that this month, that would be good. And we'll have a chance a little bit later to talk about last month's assignment, which was chapter 1 and chapter 7. Officer reports. I don't see Tony here. I don't think there's any. There were a couple of fires. Was it last month? I don't see any firefighters. Yeah, well, I don't see any firefighters here. A couple of fires up. Yeah.
At my place.
Yeah. And 2 up River Road West. Then there was one in Thompson Falls, another one in Hot Springs. So it's been kind of a busy structure fire year. Police department, unless their officer doesn't. No, okay. Okay. The chief isn't here.
You have the report from Brian.
We do.
It was on the table.
Was it?
Yeah, so you probably don't have it in your packet.
Do you have your copy?
Maybe.
Oh, thank you. Oh, yes, it was on the table. Police Department statistics. In the month of February, we had the Police Department had 35 full-time calls for service. 9 arrests were made. Criminal and traffic citations written were 109. Citizen contacts were 12. Business and bar checks were 28. Resident checks were 21. Other agency assists were 18. Reserve officers had 3 hours. In-uniform hours were 7.5 for reserve officers. Paid reserve officer hours were 0. And grant hours worked were 18.5. The grant hours are a grant that they have from the state to kind of put some extra patrol on. So we don't have anybody from the Public Works Department. Do we have a report from you, Chad, on Public Works at all?
Public Works didn't meet.
Okay. Library, I think you have some good news, Nikki.
I'm news. Real quick, we have a chess tournament on March 15th. If you like playing chess, we can use players. Doesn't cost anything. It's just gonna be a good time. Good afternoon of playing chess. A little bit of prizes for the winners. Nothing big. And we're also gonna have our second annual 5K and fun run. It's a fundraiser for the library. It was really successful last year. It was a really good time, real fun. It's a really cheap race, so if you're into that kind of thing. And yes, we got a grant for from the ALA and the along with the I forgot the name of the association, but they promote handicap accessibility in rural communities, not just libraries, but all rural communities. So Joel had written a nice supportive letter and went along with my application, and I just found out this last week that we got it. It's $10,000. There were bigger ones. That was the smallest one they had to offer, but I was really excited because at the very least our handicap accessible door has been broken for 2 years. That will more than pay for that. Also, our fire exit door has never had has never had a handicap push button at all, which I think that would be a really good idea. So it'll pay for those 2, and anything that's left over we'll use for making our website more handicap friendly, more visual impairment, color impairment friendly. That's what I got. Thanks.
Very good. Good work. Thank you, Nikki. It is remarkable how expensive those ADA doors are with inflation and such, but it's good to have that funding. So let's move on to unfinished business. Today is the second reading of the ordinance on restricting certain businesses, or the decency ordinance. I've handed you all a letter that was written to Town Hall. Would somebody hand me your letter? Because I think I gave one of mine away. And I'll just read that so that the public here can hear the concerns of one citizen. This letter is concerning the article in the Ledger Thursday, February 13th, 2025. My only source of information has been this article, so feel free to address any concerns as well as any corrections as well as my concerns. I'm deeply concerned about this ordinance going through without a vote from the community. I am not saying that I necessarily want these shops or shows in town. My concern is the council people trying to control the morals of consenting adults. In my opinion, it is an overreach of power of the town government. It is legal for consenting adults to view porn and stripper shows. It is not right for the government to make that moral call for others. My immediate thought, other than all the fictional dystopian books' warnings on this, is the prohibition. It started in part by a group of women who were upset that their husbands were getting drunk at saloons. The women protested, and the government eventually jumped into making a moral call on this issue. It is a personal matter between couples and should not be anyone else's business to control. The decency ordinance worries me that a precedent will be set, and where will the government stop? Dress codes, speech restrictions, prohibitions, etc. I know all or almost all of the council members are active within their local churches. Maybe you should start there, where the heart of the matter can be morally and spiritually addressed. Church is more suited for this discussion of morality, in my opinion. I propose that you as a council put the decency ordinance to a vote of the entire community. It would be easier to swallow knowing that we had a say in this matter. I appreciate all you do for the community. It's a tough job sometimes, and you're incredibly gracious and kind to the community members. Thank you for this. So I just thought I would read that publicly. So there is some concerns about the decency ordinance, but that is, again, one citizen. And there will be another opportunity for public comment if anybody has a concern about that. This is the second reading of this ordinance. There is a third one to come next month. So with that said,
So this is your second reading. After this one, it goes into effect in 30 days.
okay.
So you don't have another
We don't have a
opportunity.
okay. So this actually will go into effect after 30 days. So do I have any discussion on the decency ordinance?
If I talk, I cough, but from a therapeutic standpoint, I think it's good to restrict this in our town so that minors are not unintentionally exposed to it, whereas in other larger areas, they will have these kinds of businesses way out in the county somewhere, not usually right downtown. So, thinking more like Bozeman and such. So.
I did meet with this citizen as well that wrote that letter and explained a little more of what it was, that it isn't the idea of restricting or banning that business from town, but just a restriction of where we would put those businesses. And I think there was an understanding that obviously a church doesn't want a dicey shop next door to it, or a school, or there's just a lot of places that we don't want that kind of business taking over or coming into town, so or into certain places in town. So there seemed to be some understanding with that conversation. Is there any public comment on the decency ordinance? A very amenable group tonight. And speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, well, I would take a motion.
Would that just be, I move that we approve the ordinance on restricting certain businesses as
Second
presented?
that.
Moved and seconded that we approve, again, the ordinance on restricting certain businesses. This is our second read. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Only other unfinished business is our council assignment on the discussion of ordinances, chapters 1 and 7. Were there any particular concerns of the council in their reading of that they'd like to bring up at this point?
Yes, I had a couple, because I highlighted and I wrote my highlighter. So, in chapter 1.08, the general penalty, I'm not sure that I understood who makes the judgment call. Like, it's talking about there's a judgment, but who? Unless it was written somewhere else in the ordinance and I missed it. This is like the judgment for a fine, or whether they're being imprisoned.
$1.8. Good question. It's something to look at, to maybe clarify, or find the answer.
We'll find the answer,
Yeah.
right? And maybe if we're gonna have to redo some of these, just make that a little bit more clear in the legal easiness of reading these, which was horrible. Yeah.
Very good. Any other discussion?
And then 1.10, I'm sorry. Down in the second paragraph of 1.10.030, it says, unless otherwise stated in this code, whatever all posted documents shall be placed outside and inside of town hall at the places currently designated. Therefore, what are those locations? The way they wrote it's real
What are we talking about here?
You said one,
outside and inside of town hall at the places currently designated. Therefore, which great for legalese, but where exactly are those locations that these posted documents shall be placed? But where are they placed? 1.10.030, second paragraph. I know, right? I highlighted,
030, mine
did
was
all the things.
Are you missing
no,
one?
no, I'm not. 1.10,
1.10.030 posting. and
okay,
listing.
I got, yeah.
And then in that second paragraph of the posting.
Should be posted within 1 business.
Oh, we post here at City Hall, or here. We post here in the post office, and it's also on our sign, it's on our website, it's on our Facebook page.
Okay. And I didn't know if that needed to be specifically stated in here. so
And we
people
only,
read these and where they're at.
technically, we only have to do it in 3
Three
spots.
places, yeah. It just said wherever they're currently designated, therefore. It wasn't a lot of information, so I was just curious about that.
Yeah.
And then you said the other one was 7, right? 'Cause I'm sure I highlighted things in here too. I might be the only one talking. That was 7.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah. So 7, on page 73, up here, B. B1, it says any condition which constitutes an attractive nuisance. What's an attractive nuisance? That is not really described in here. So how do I know what's an attractive nuisance?
The swimming pool, the trampoline, the deep hole.
Those are attractive?
other,
Like they attract things to
Little
them?
kids.
Okay. Okay, I was thinking, how do you know what's attractive or not? Maybe I think my lawnmower is attractive. I don't know. So it didn't really make a lot of
little kid that can't
sense.
swim, I like our swimming pool.
Okay.
It's not fenced off.
Okay, so an attractive nuisance literally means it's going to attract people to your property. Okay, that makes more sense to me now. That way, designating what's good. And then I did have a question. So the abatement by town. So in section 703.110, here in B at the end of that. When they're talking about the cost of the abatement, if any shall be paid to the owner of the property from which the public nuisance was abated when a proper claim to the excess is established. As I was reading, I didn't see anywhere where it described what the proper claim process was or what that looks like, unless I missed that as well. But I was trying to look.
the cost of abatement surplus payment shall be paid to the owner of property from which the, say again, your
But the
question.
proper claim to the excess is established. As I was looking through here, I couldn't find what the proper claim is to be able to get that taken care of, right? The surplus money to go back to the owner. What says a proper claim has to be done, but I was not able to identify what the proper claim process was. So if somebody was reading that to say, hey, I want to get that surplus, how do they go about doing that? And I may have missed it, I just didn't see it. So this is talking about, if you're salvaging any of the materials and there's excess funds, once the abatement's paid for, the excess funds can go to the owner of the property as long as the proper claim is done. But I don't know what the proper claim is. Does that kind of make sense?
Right. I think the proper claim is going to be decided by how much it actually costs to abate the nuisance. So if there's a reserve of that, the town isn't to take that reserve. That would have to go back to the.
So they don't
The
have to
property owner.
go through some channel to do a proper claiming, so that the town would just do that and give them the excess if there was excess?
Yes, I would hope. We'd want to keep it to the actual cost of the abatement. Yeah.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I don't think you guys-
Oh, you're
okay.
good.
These time, are there time limits? Okay, so what was I looking at? Oh, so the prohibited acts and the noise complaint, and I read it, it's all great stuff, except nothing in here said anything about a time. So like if I'm listening to speakers at the park and I'm listening to my music, well in here, then I am breaking our ordinance of a prohibited act of 7.08.030, because it doesn't give a time.
I believe it's 10 p.m.
But it's curfew, but it's
It's not
not
listed in
in
there?
here. There's no time listed in here, whether it's construction noise, parties, listening to music in my car, my dog barking. I didn't see any actual time in our ordinance. So is it prohibited all the time, or is it just at specific times?
No, I thought there was specific times. Danny, do you remember
I
anything
thought
about
so
this?
too. I just didn't read it in our actual ordinance book. So there is only one that has times, and that is construction noises from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. Nothing else had a time in here.
Okay,
So
make
that
a,
was-
if you'll make a notation of these, and let's go ahead and look at them, yeah.
Yeah, I got it notated. I did my
Very good.
homework. Okay, that was it.
Yes,
Good
I
for
think
you.
it's the same time for all of them. It's just only listed under
It's
their construction.
only listed in construction, correct? Yeah.
It needs to be
Okay,
clarified in the rest of those too.
Mm-hmm.
good catch, thank you for that.
Unless again I missed it, and I did read it multiple times because I thought surely there's times that I must be missing something. Okay.
Is that all?
Anyone
Chapter
else?
10 next. That's it. I didn't
Thank
copy
you
the
for
whole
doing
thing.
your assignment.
Yep.
Anyone else? All right, we'll move to new business. First on the agenda for new business is the Llewellyn Street subdivision, where it's before the council tonight to, we have a recommendation from the planning board. The planning board has recommended that the subdivision on Llewellyn Street be approved, and that actually, do you have anything that you want to bring up on that, Corey, or as an approval from the planning board, or
Or specifically what
we have-
variances they're asking
we can get them
for?
up.
we can bring them up?
Do you want a little bit of an explanation?
Yeah, and then we can bring up Jerry Grabentz as well, just to ask questions of or clarify.
Grab this map. So, this will work. So some of the conditions of approval are accepting 2 variances, I believe. One of the variances is the open space, the 30% open space, where 30% of the development has to just be left, to natural vegetation and things like that. So that's one variance. They want to forego that 30%. And Jerry's got some pretty good info about that. The other one is this little easement right here that would give basically driveway access to lot 4. I don't know if you can see that. The way it's designed, without this, lot 4 wouldn't have any access. So obviously it was designed in mind to ask for that variance from the get-go. So those are the 2 variances they're asking for. We didn't see any, the planning board didn't see any reason not to give the variance. I know some things have come up since then, but that's up to the council. There's some definitions of why you would give a variance. One of them is that by not giving it, it would place the owners in undue hardship, I think.
In what way?
Well, I was trying to think of an example earlier, but what I can say is,
What are they saying is the hardship?
Yeah.
right, the hardship they've presented to themselves. Now it's a new development, so the owner owns all of them. So the hardship would come, I guess, when someone bought that lot. It would be very clear to them that, hey, you have to leave this access open
for your neighbor. So I think if, someone was, I think if lot 5 and say lot 3 and lot 3, 4, and 5 were different owners, I think it would be a little different for lot 4 to ask for that variance, because now we're asking the owners of 3 and 5, we're basically putting a hardship on those two, where in this case, I think that it's all sort of in the plan, and when someone goes to buy this lot, put a house on it, that's already been done, it's already up front. Now, some have said that they could just change these property lines and not have to ask for this variance. Why they don't do that, I don't know. But anyways, those are the variants they're asking for.
And why do you want the variance for the 30% that's left in natural vegetation? I get the variance for the driveway access. What's the reason for the first variance?
Jerry had explained that a lot of times when that variance, if you didn't give the variance, so there's 30% of these lots remain tall grass, bushes, no one maintains it. A lot of times it becomes an eyesore and a fire hazard. So like Jerry said, in a large, say you develop this giant pasture over here, if you're going to develop something like that that's had irrigation before, that maybe you would leave that 30%, but in a situation like this, none of it's been irrigated, it's just kind of wild, and chances are no one's going to take care of it. It would fall on the town to keep it nice. We have some issues like that kind of along the railroad tracks. So I think the best thing is let them develop that land, plant grass, whatever they're going to do, and they'll take care of it, each owner, rather than tell them, you can't do anything with that. Then they probably won't do anything with that. So that's my understanding.
We have Jerry Grabent. Jerry, can you hear us? Uh-oh, we can't hear him.
We can't hear you.
I'm pulling back down for a second here.
Also, we have Tamara Ross and Paul Forsting here with IMEG. And if you guys want to speak to that, if you have something to say concerning the variances.
Yeah, I could add to the conversation. I think Corey was precisely right. The 30% open space requirement relates to prime farmland or prime farmland soils. And so you have a regulation that says if you've got farmland soils, you got to save 30% of it. And so we've asked for a variance from that because I think the idea was, this hasn't been farmland of importance that the towns, what was discussed at the planning board and the deliberations at the planning board, if I'm recalling them correctly, Corey, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is if we have a larger farmland swaths, say outside of town, was what I recall, there may be a larger importance on preserving that for some ag importance, but there hasn't been an importance here in ag. There hasn't been any history of ag. There hasn't been irrigation here for ag land. And so it was, I think Corey did a good job of describing it. Just having a 30% set aside on these relatively small, on this relatively small acreage would maybe lead to an eyesore at the end of the day. Whereas letting the individual landowners just have that land, could lead to a little bit, they could water it, they could use it, it'd be productive, they could play on it, kind of thing. Just, I think it'll look a little nicer at the end of the day for everybody. That was the end discussion there. It is kind of an unusual rule to have a 30% set aside. That's kind of a more progressive rule you see in some of the areas where they're looking to, I guess, preserve more farmland. And I'm not sure if, I don't know how often you guys actually see subdivisions where you've saved farmland, but I could see it on a large farmland development where you said, hey, I'm going to save 10 acres of a 30, I don't want to do the math here now, but say I want to save 10 acres, that may be a pretty meaningful tract of land that somebody could come in and farm. Or even if you got left with 2 acres, maybe somebody could farm that. I don't know the economics of farming, but when we're talking about a 3 acre tract, you know, when we're getting down to maybe less than an acre, I don't know what kind of farming you're gonna get there without much irrigation there.
Maybe that's why that cornfield is still on reserve there.
Yeah, well, I know. They do pretty well. That's Benson's Farm. I think they do pretty well, that micro agriculture there. But so, and then talking about this design here, I think you did a pretty good job of describing it. You probably could flag it at the end of the day. Maybe you could come up with a different design there. The variances came up really at the late end of the conversation when Jerry came involved. Joel hired at the city or the town hired Jerry at the very end and said, "Hey, we didn't even realize we needed the variance to that, so we added it at the end. Maybe if we realized that early on, we may have made that design change." But I think it's pretty benign either way. I don't know. It's not really affecting anybody. It's not really no harm, no foul there. I don't think. You know, having an easement across people's property is not a big deal for access. It happens all over the place. This is going to be a small little encumbrance on this corner here. But you're probably right. It probably could be designed to come in here just like a flag. That's one way of turning a flag lot and pushing these boundaries out a little bit. But from a surveyor standpoint, they like it to be kind of more square for putting their corner pins.
Would lot 4 be designated as a flag lot if you change those boundaries?
I don't know. Technically, it would kind of look like a flag. I'm calling it a flag, more like a flag. Is usually got a long, skinny section. I don't know if I'd call it a flag lot. You guys would have to ask Jerry if he thought it was a flag lot in that point. In some regulations that I can't recall if yours do or don't have flag lot prohibitions, or if they're permitted or not. But it would have a little stem, or like a spigot or some, you know, kind of a dog leg there. You know, had we known that a variance was needed, maybe we could have pinched it around and designed it a little bit, teeny bit different. But we think the design at the end works really well, and the easement isn't really problematic at all. So I think it's kind of a non-offensive way of working a way to get access to lot 4, giving everybody kind of a nice even back lot design here. So just one way of doing it. But the variances did come at the very back end when Jerry got hired on. He said, "Hey, you guys need variances here." And so then we became aware of them, kind of had to deal with them at the very back end of the project. So kind of limited our options a little bit on what to do.
Okay, thank you, Paul.
Yep.
Am I done being Vanna?
Yeah, if you want.
But you make a good Vanna.
Jory, would you like to speak to the variances at all? Do you have anything to add to that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. Super. Sorry. So on the variances, probably the one that I would speak to the most is the 30% agricultural requirement. And I work for the town. I have no interest, no financial interest in this subdivision. That being said, it is very unusual to have a standard to have 30% of a piece of property where the soils are identified as prime ag being protected, particularly in a municipality. Out in the county, if we were dealing with a 100-acre chunk of ground with, irrigation rights and irrigation infrastructure. So from my perspective, it is a very strange standard in the current town subdivision ordinance. That being said, as the council knows, the planning board recommended that their recommendation was to grant the variance. On lot 4 on the easement, to me, it's not that big of a deal. It's just that the standard in the town subdivision ordinance requires that all the lots basically be on a street right of way. The discussion about a flag lot, that wouldn't really be a flag lot. As Paul pointed out, typically a flag lot is you end up, somebody wants to subdivide the back half of a 5 or 10 acre lot, and they put this tiny little 20-foot strip up to the side of a lot, and just to provide access. That's typically what we think of as a flag lot. So this technically to me is not a flag lot. but with that, boy, I'd answer any questions you have.
So does the council have any concerns, thoughts, comment, question?
Can that hammerhead be extended both ways so it gives access to all the lots and complies with our ordinance
Without the variance?
without the variance?
Did you hear that, Jerry?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know if it was directed to me. You could certainly do a requirement that lot 4 touch basically be adjacent to the hammerhead right of way. That, I mean, you could deny the variance request and say we want you to redesign that so that lot 4 has direct access on the hammerhead. That is definitely within your bounds to do if you choose to.
Kind of doesn't make sense. It's the biggest lot and it's asking for an easement in other places. Just saying.
Is there any precedent that the council has given variances in this particular fashion before? So as the next people come and ask for variances, obviously they look at what's been done before.
Well, again, variances have to be, given where there's hardship, and that's the question here: is what hardship is it actually to the developer in,
Addressing that, Joel, in
Right.
section 13.18.020 under variances, section B, the last sentence says, undue hardship does not include personal or financial hardship or any hardship that is self-imposed, meaning design of the lots, etc., etc. Just thought I'd point that out.
So that would be lot 4, not necessarily the 30% agricultural stuff, but lot 4 was designed by them to be a hardship that they created themselves.
Correct.
Okay.
That was a self-imposed hardship.
Right.
They created the problem, and now they want us to bail them out.
But if it was redesigned and that hammerhead reached down to lot 4,
I'd be able to speak to that. We would just redesign the lots. That hammerhead, that's the design of the fire department's approved road design hammerhead. Like extending every foot of Relidio road cost is going to be very expensive. So we would, if you don't think there's a hardship with that design, we would just kind of take away the easement and reconfigure the lot, just to touch it down, bring it in. Like just instead of this being shaded as an easement, we would just bring this lot corner in there, creating just bringing this lot, come in here, physically actually bringing it in to touch the road. Actually extending the road is really expensive. If Dwayne was here, he's not here today, but he told the planning board he's not about to make any money off this subdivision. I mean, he offered to sell it at the last project if anybody wants to buy it at cost. He expects it to be a slow build out. He's going to be holding these lots, and the city's asked him to loop the water main for purposes of pressure and things, and that's going to really eat into the gains that he's going to make off this project. So we don't want to actually have to extend the infrastructure. We'll just, if it's acceptable to everybody, we'll just touch the lot there to the corner. We would have done that had we realized that there was a variance needed. We probably would have done that, but like I said, it was kind of a back end request to be. Jerry said, "Hey, you need a variance there," so we put it in. But
Okay.
At the end of the day, worked on a lot of projects that have variances, and at the end of the day, almost everyone you could say that the variance is self-imposed, and we could get in this argument. You can almost never talk your way out of it. Is a variance, once you start going down the road and prove that your variance isn't self-imposed, and prove that the hardship isn't prove your hardship. it's really almost impossible. I mean, you know, you're proposing the project. You can always drop lots. You can always, you know, you can always do things, and so it's really tough. Like variances are kind of almost, they're one of the harder things out there to prove. You know, so anywho, that just not to try to like shut down.
Thank you for explaining that.
Yeah, so I mean, we really trying to keep the cost down because Dwayne really wants to keep these as affordable as possible. They're going to be expensive at the end of the day. That's just kind of a default. New homes are expensive. The infrastructure on this is going to be really expensive. The road, the water, the sewer. It's going to turn out. These are going to be. There's no way sugarcoating them. They're going to be $500,000, $600,000 houses at the end of the day, just based on construction costs. That's just what new homes cost today, you know. And so Dwayne's trying to keep it as he really wants to provide housing for the community, if he can. So he's really challenged us to keep it efficient, or he might not be able to keep it going. So anyway, so that would be our preference is just to actually make a physical connection with the lot. And just if that variance can't be approved, we would just rearrange that little corner there, and it's, you know, really no difference in easement or a real redesign of the corner.
Any other thoughts from the council?
Any concerns with the open space variance from the council for the first variance that they're asking for?
I think it's too small of an acreage to really consider that. I mean, it's, you know, it would be a problem for the town to take care of. So, yeah, I don't see.
And there's a lot of green space around that with the bank and the hospital and the school.
Right.
As well. Is there any public comment? Dan?
I would simply ask you guys to follow your own ordinance. The language for granting variances seems very restrictive, that dollars couldn't be even considered in it. And not to be contradictory, but the county somewhat regularly grants variances. They're usually for physical features. A road can only be placed in a certain spot because of rock cliffs, for example. People granted 2 variances on subdivision recently. But again, if you read the 18, whatever it was John said, there was a specific set of things that allow you to grant variance. It's may grant, not shall. So as soon as you grant those variances, no matter what the reason, you then set precedence to somebody that comes in afterwards. I think the other thing that in previous applications on the same piece of property that brought up by the current town engineer and the former town attorney, and maybe Jerry can address, was the 1 to 3 lot to depth ratio. And the engineer said that was specifically described that way to ban flag lots or things of that nature. Essentially long skinny driveways that open up into a bigger lot. So, that's it.
Thank you, Dan. Any other public comment?
To me, extending that hammerhead out to the corner would end all problems. Got no variances, no nothing. If it goes up in the end, and then the road enters into the property right at that corner, end of problem. No variance, no nothing. Done. Just my view.
I guess one more thing, and maybe Jared would answer that too. Would this require an amendment to the proposal and a resubmit, in other words? If the variance was not passed.
Did you hear that, Jerry?
I did. So from my perspective, based upon what Paul has said, all they will probably simply do is tilt the lot line between lot 4 and 5 enough that lot 4 has direct access onto the hammerhead. And in my opinion, in my experience, it is not a significant change to the overall subdivision application. But that's just my perspective. Typically, when you're talking about a significant change in the subdivision, it's either increasing the number of lots or a major change in your road network or something to do with sewer and water provision. They don't want to put in a fire hydrant. So adjusting a lot line to provide access, and correct me, Paul, you should weigh in here and tell me if you think we're on the same wavelength, is they'll probably just tilt that lot line between lot 4 and 5. I mean, they're gonna have to talk to their surveyor about it. But typically that is not a significant change, especially because this has been part of the conversation since the staff report, the planning board hearing. It's not like this hasn't been discussed amongst the planning board and the council thus far.
Yeah, so what Jerry's saying, and I'm picking up on what he's saying, is that we could, one step is just to move this lot line to right here, just to give enough access to pull lot 4 over here to where it could come directly off of here. I don't know if everybody can see that, but lot 4 is currently, we just left it with enough room for an access here, but if you move that slot line over just enough over here where it's touching this, then it can come in here. I agree with Jerry. This kind of stuff can be worked out. It's just without needing to resubmittal of any sort.
So it'll be increasing the size of the
lot 4 would get bigger.
The whole line would move.
This line right here.
Provisionally.
This line would shift.
To contact the corner of the hammerhead.
Yeah, to the easement. It would contact this easement, the road right away. Yeah. The alternative would be kind of delineated and just actually give it this physical space here. Those would be the two alternatives.
So you have to shade some off the additional.
The other one,
adjacent lot.
or you could take it, those are the two alternatives. One would be to just, instead of easements, just make this part of lot 4. Or the other one would just make lot 4 bigger and shrink lot 5. And that would just be, you could deny the variance and just require a condition that lot 4 have physical access to the road right away. But extending that road, we're gonna pay per linear foot for this road, and every bit of that's gonna be very expensive. So just moving this road all the way over here is gonna be would be a very expensive. It'll eat up lot 3, and it would be a very expensive thing that wouldn't be much wouldn't really gain much. So it'd be much easier to do this and just keep the owners at the end of the day would benefit from it, and it will keep the cost down for the developer, who ultimately at the end of the day he's really trying to keep these lot prices down, because they're going to be people want to live in Plains, people in the community. People who, there's been people in the community. Some people from the hospital have said, hey, maybe we could do a house or two out here. Some people with connections to the school thought, hey, we could do a house or two out here. And then it's going to be people who just want to build a house out here. He thinks it's going to take a while. There's not a huge demand for housing here. So he thinks it's going to be people from the community here who are going to want to build a house. So.
Thank you, Paul. Brooke, you had something?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jerry, I constantly kept hearing him say, the standard. That this is the standard for the city, this is the standard for the town, this is the standard. And if you don't stick with the standard and you deviate from that, how many deviations do you have to do when the next one comes along, and the next one comes along, and the next one comes along? So if the standard is, that the variance has to be approved based upon a hardship, and there is no undue hardship other than maybe a financial thing that is brought on by themselves, then, it leaves it open for a lot of different people to do different things.
outside of the variances, I did have some communication with somebody in my ward that was asking what has been decided with the actual road, Llewellyn, as far as traffic, emergency vehicles, if somebody has a fire or ambulance, how is that going to be controlled with, we can't control the school traffic, whether it's events or lunchtime. Do we have that figured out as well to manage all of that and still get emergency personnel to those new homes at any time that's necessary?
That was probably one of my primary concerns was traffic flow, whether there's a school event or not. I mean, that area is designated for the school.
Well, it is, and it's a one-way road, so you have to come in a long way. So let's say you've got to get a fire truck there and you're coming through, then all of a sudden all these people are milling about trying to get over there because there's no other access to those homes. Again, I've not been to the planning meeting, so I don't know what's been determined in that area as well.
Can we hold that thought, because I've also got another public comment that I'll read on that, and we can touch that. I kind of want to go back. I don't want to back to the easement, the variance request. I think, just so that you all know, I think the elephant in the room, or the thing that we're struggling with, if I can speak for the council, and tell me if I'm not speaking for you, is our concern with setting a precedent, with somehow breaking our ordinance, in that variance, if it's not an actual hardship. And we're obviously dealing with planning engineers that know a whole lot more about this, have been through this. And I appreciate your honest comments on that. I think am I wrong? I think that's the concern with the council, is setting a precedent that we may have to, that might come back and bite us in the hind parts later on by giving a variance like that. At the same time, I don't think that anybody wants to make this more financially difficult for the developer. And so I'm not so sure that we all don't feel kind of caught in that hard spot. Now we have the hardship, in making that decision. Thoughts on that?
That's not our intent at all, is to create financial burden on the developer at all. We've got a set of rules here that we're actually bound by law to adhere to, and once we start setting precedences, this variance, that variance, on and on it goes.
If I heard you correctly, Paul, moving the property lines, though, will not be a huge financial burden to the developer if you just have to move it a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Okay, so that piece is not going to be a huge burden. And looking at this first variance with the open space thing, and it does say that we can give a variance when compliance with those standards would result in undue hardship and would not be essential to the public welfare. If the real issue is not just eyesores but fire hazards, I think it would make sense to give a variance for the open space in that tiny small area, so we're not trying to have agricultural land, but people are maintaining their own lawns. That one I think does fit our ability to give a variance. Am I reading that correctly? It's all legalese here. Okay. And then the second one, if they can change it, we don't have to give a variance at all, and it won't be an undue hardship to the developer. Am I hearing that correctly? Somebody correct me if I'm mishearing that.
So I'm happy to weigh in. If you deny the variance for lot 4 and access, then the subdivider is going to need to move the lot line. And if you decide your rationale, your finding of fact on granting the variance for the open space issue is not to end up with unmaintained open space, which could be a fire hazard, noxious weeds. Does that sound right?
Sort of how I'm reading it, yeah.
Any further comment on that issue, on the variances? Okay, let's move on to the access. That has been a concern of the planning board and kind of was one of our initial concerns was access because of the one-way street down Rittenhour and up Llewellyn going past the school. It's been a concern of the town, of the planning board. I'll just read this from a citizen who wanted this as public comment. Dear Mayor and Plains City Council, my name is Kathy Abar. I live at 104 Pierce Street, Plains. I write to you today in regards to the proposed Llewellyn subdivision. My husband and I are both in our 70s. If we should choose to downsize and become residents in this subdivision, I would be concerned that the possibility of slowed emergency response times may exist due to extraordinary amount of traffic that surrounds the school, especially at drop-off, pickup, sporting events, and graduations. Should we live within the subdivision and have a fire or an unexpected health emergency, my fear would be that the emergency vehicles may be delayed. I believe that Llewellyn should be made a permanent two-way from Highway 200 to the entrance of the new subdivision. The decision to turn Llewellyn into a two-way is within the jurisdiction of the town council because it is a town right-of-way. Doing so was the desired result by many attendees. And she's talking about the planning board there. While we were informed that 2 traffic studies were compiled, I questioned the accuracy of actual impact to this neighborhood as a whole due to its proximity to the school. Tam, one of the IMEG representatives present at the meeting, stated our traffic memo is not a full-blown traffic analysis. So then stated that their traffic analysis incorporated multiple uses. So which is it, a traffic memo or a traffic analysis? The reason these questions are so important to me is the reality that the town of Plains, while it will benefit by the addition of this subdivision, does not have expendable income to spend on expanding streets. Since the developer will be finishing the streets in the subdivision, would it not behoove him to participate in the resurfacing of a new two-way road leading to his subdivision? He stated that he wants to help the community. It seems to me advantageous of not having to use Rittenhour to access this project would in itself be of great help to him and save time and money. As use of equipment needed to complete his development is going to further degrade Rittenhour, and it seems he would therefore be required to bring it back to its current condition once construction is completed. This is a possible solution. If construction traffic is able to avoid using Rittenhour altogether during the development of this subdivision by the creation of a two-way to the entrance of his subdivision, I don't know if that's a sentence or not. The residents of the subdivision, as well as many and all emergency vehicles, would have the two-way from 200 to access their homes. The safety of the students, as well as all of the residents in the area, will be better protected. I also have questions regarding the width of Horseman Place and the Hammerhead and the ease of access for emergency vehicles should there be cars parked on the street. With a Hammerhead, where do the visiting vehicles turn around in people's driveways, or will they need to back up into the center of the T in order to exit? So you've all been handed that. Those are some concerns of another citizen. Is there anyone that would like to speak to that or comment on that? Anyone?
My concern would be the safety of people going back and forth to school. That needs to be uppermost in our minds. I think considering a two-way street. I've heard some people talk about a two-way street from the top end of Llewellyn down to the Highway 200. But I kind of think that maybe we should just think about maybe a two-way street to the entrance of the Hammerhead.
Rittenhour? Oh, to the, okay, yes, right.
And just leave the rest of that as a one-way.
That's been talked about,
how
yeah.
you do that. I'm not an engineer, but
That was kind of one of my original thoughts. We tossed that idea around, was having it two-way from Highway 200 to the turnoff to this subdivision.
Right.
Like you're proposing, that was one of the ideas we tossed around.
Right. I mean, it would allow, at least the traffic would be going from the school down to the Hammerhead Road, in one way, one direction. So at least that kids on the side of the road, on the footpath, sidewalk, can at least travel safely, so somewhat, you know. But I just really think that people's safety should be paramount in making a decision like that, you know.
Any further comment from council or from public?
My question would be, if that is granted and that is the plan to make it a two-way to the entrance of their subdivision, whose responsibility does that fall upon? Is that the city's responsibility to upgrade the road? Because I don't know if anybody pays much attention to the surface streets of the town of Plains, but we don't have the infrastructure to fix the roads that we have currently. And burdening the city with development of a two-way street that's currently already falling apart as a one-way street, if it's the city's responsibility, I think that I'm not sure that pans out to where it benefits the city if we're having to pay to develop the road for the subdivision. So my question would be, who is going to pay for that development?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, Nikki.
I don't know a lot about this, I'm learning, but wouldn't the tax revenue that comes from those new homes, and it sounds like they're going to be nice ones, would that eventually in the long run counteract some of that expense that the city will have initially?
I would think that might be a long game, but that's absolutely something we want to think about. Not only having housing for people that are moving in, but it's also housing inside of the town, and we don't have a lot of spaces in the town. So I mean, there is revenue that will come off of that. You know, again, ideally it can be a win-win. That's what we're looking for.
But somebody would have to put that money up front, which the city doesn't have, to have that road built long before people are even building there.
Brooke.
I think that making it a two-way street puts a burden on the city, an undue hardship on the city, and where do we get to ask for a variance on that?
Can we ask the county for a variance?
Any more comment from yeah?
I would just say improving the road, or whether it's a two-way, is ancillary to whether you grant subdivision or not. I mean, the town does not have impact fees to help address these road shortcomings. That would be something you guys might could adopt in the future. It would not apply to this.
Yeah.
I'm definitely concerned, but
Yeah, we really can't pin that on the developer. Yeah, and that's certainly the safety of our kids in the school. All of that; those are things that we're going to have to be watchful of. And so it is. There's I guess you could call it a lose-lose, but it can be a win-win. And that's something that I would hope that we can do. And yes, Dan.
2 more points. Your mills will float. You're familiar with floating mills, so it isn't a direct correlation, a one-to-one correlation between new construction or newly taxable. You get newly taxable the first year, but then it'll roll into your budget in a different way. So it won't be you won't get every penny of tax dollars collected from these individual residences.
Will the county? Never mind, that was
no. And I guess kind of lastly, if there's going to be a redraw, however minor, of the plans, I would suggest you guys take this under consideration until you actually see a draft of those plans.
Take what under consideration, Dan?
There's going to be
if
hypothetically you don't approve,
session runs out.
Hypothetically, if you don't approve the variance request, and then you are good folks from IMAG here saying it's going to be a small boundary line adjustment, etc. I think prudence would say you see that design before you approve such a plan.
I would have to agree with that. I was just gonna say, obviously you can't say yay or nay based on the road issue, but I would just urge the developer to maybe work with town, whatever the town has to do, whether it's grants, whatever it is, but all the equipment's gonna be there on site to do that work. So if there was any way that the developer and the town could work together while that equipment's there to make that two-way happen, I'm really good at spending other people's money, so that's why I'm throwing this out there.
Fantastic.
But it would just, I mean, it seems like it would certainly save the town money if there was a way to work it, and maybe he'd be willing to, help out with equipment or something, so just something to ask him about.
Since this has been a conversation for a while during this, has anything like that been talked about with the developer about helping with roads or using equipment? Is that something that
It's really not something we can talk about, at this point. That responsibility isn't on him, what we do with our roads, and we really can't pin that on him. That's separate from the development. The development does affect that.
I just didn't know if it had been brought up since it's been such a heavy conversation for a while.
No. Tracy?
Help me understand, if that is not a two-way road, the traffic would be routed in front of the school?
All of it.
All the traffic would be
Construction.
going
Correct.
in front of the school?
Yep, all of that traffic going to the subdivision would go by the school every time they go in.
All the construction vehicles, everything.
So they're gonna tear that road up,
That
so
road
it
is
already
in-
is.
It's in
Or in
horrible
shape.
condition, absolutely. It won't be able to withstand that.
And in truth, it's that way now. The subdivider, the developer hasn't made it that way. So that is still on us as the town. I mean, we need to fix Llewellyn and Rittenhour. And they're a high priority roads. This runs them up in the priority too. Any other public comment? Any other input? We have it's a tough problem. It has been for all the reasons mentioned, particularly the last. But
I have one final question for Dan Rowan. Do you happen to know what the current cost of asphalt is, say, per mile or quarter mile or?
We paid last season $92 a ton, depending on road width, how far that'll get you. But it's roughly, standard road, it might be $200,000 worth of material for a mile.
For a mile?
Just for material.
material.
So my only question is, to make that a two-way, we have to widen it. What easements does the city have on that road already?
That's a 60-foot easement on that road.
Is there?
Yeah.
Would we have to put a sidewalk in from?
That's in that 60-foot easement.
Okay, but would we have to put in a sidewalk?
I think we'd want a walkway for sure on at least from the Hammerhead entrance to the school.
Correct.
So at minimum, we're probably talking a couple $100,000 just in material without it being on the ground yet. More than likely with asphalt and concrete costs. I'm just roughing without sitting down.
I talked about it with a contractor. The spitball on that was between 60 and 100,000 to that's about 400 foot of road that would go from Highway 200 to the entrance of the Hammerhead. About what we pay for a city block, or less. That's a small block. So now is the hard part. It kind of comes down to a motion from the council.
Make a motion that we deny the variance request.
Second that.
Is that both variance requests or just one of them?
I would say at this point, both of them.
A motion is on the floor.
John.
Did you second it? Moved and seconded that we deny both variances.
Do you want to roll?
Voice vote on
Yeah, let's take a voice vote.
Chad?
Yes.
John R?
Yes.
John S?
Yes.
JD?
Yes.
Lana?
No.
John D?
Yes.
That motion passes, so both variances are denied. Yeah. I guess we'll go back to the drawing board. Wow, that was a lot. Sorry, and thank you for your patience, all of you. For the sake of time, I would ask if there's any, if anybody would have a problem with making a consent agenda on the approval to sign the lagoon cell cover contract with Lemtech to the amount of $137,000, conditional upon attorney review of the contract. And the next point, approval of general purchase for the lift station, conditional upon attorney review, and the approval of the generator purchase for the new well, conditional upon attorney review of the contract. All of these are covered by ARPA funds, and they're just projects that we're going through. The cover for the lagoons, and the generator for the lift station, and then the new well. If you're okay with it, we can make that a consent agenda, and one motion would cover all three. If you have a problem with that, tell me now, we can separate them out.
And that is covered by ARPA.
Yes.
Oh. I would make a motion that we approve. Did I interrupt somebody?
No.
I would make a motion that we approve all three of these points. The cover contract and the two generators to vote as one.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded that we accept all three purchases and contracts as once we have a review by our attorney of the contract. Moved and seconded. I would take a vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion passes.
Mayor, this is Jerry Gerbentz with Great West. Can I interject quickly?
Yes, you can.
So you voted to deny the variances. From my perspective, you have to make a decision on the whole of the preliminary plat, findings of fact, and conditions of approval for the subdivision.
Okay.
So essentially, if the variances have been denied, so from my perspective, the decision of the council, one way or the other, is to grant preliminary plat approval based upon the findings and conditions in the original staff report. To me, this is a very critical step to take. And then the developer will have a clear decision from the council about the entire subdivision application, the findings of fact, and conditions of approval.
Okay. So what you're saying, Jerry, is to give the developer an idea of what we're looking for, what we're asking?
Well, so the easiest thing for the council to do is based upon the staff report, the original findings and conditions. You could say we're going to grant you preliminary plat approval based upon the original staff report, findings, and conditions, because you denied the variances.
Okay. So we're accepting you're saying we're accepting the subdivision, we're just denying the variances.
Correct. And then the staff report findings and conditions end up being a legal contract between the town and the developer for his preliminary plat approval process if he decides to move forward.
Okay, I see what you're saying. And if I can speak to this too, that motion denied both variances. The question goes back to you. Do you indeed want to deny? The motion came as one set denying both. I am not sure if you do. We really want to deny the first variance of the 30%, because we had talked about that. As I understood, a little more favorably.
I did not want to exclude that one. I did want to give a variance for that one.
Okay, which is why you voted as you did, and maybe that's something that needs discussion as well. Because this, what that would do is that would provide the developer and the engineers for that to do exactly what they were saying, is go ahead and just readjust those lot lines so that they could put, so we wouldn't have to do the second variance.
Well, it was my understanding making that motion that that's exactly what they would do, is that they would make a lot of adjustments and then.
Well, and I think they would, but we denied the first variance as well, the 30% variance. And so that's something that kind of brings up another issue. That also changes the design.
It changes lot sizes.
Yeah, and then where do you put that 30%? What is that 30%? What do they do with that 30%?
Right. And do we as a city have to maintain that then, so that
Right.
it doesn't become a fire hazard? Or do we let the people who buy the property maintain it so it's not a nuisance or a fire hazard?
Okay, John Lee, you have something to add?
Yes. So it was suggested to me, because we're talking about the path that goes around the property. If we can't use the town's easement, then maybe that 30% could be used for that path. That's just one.
And tell me if I'm wrong, didn't Dwayne mention that option of in lieu of the 30% of trying to make a path there or something? Am I?
So there's two different elements at play. The 30% is a local regulation. In 1312.20. So that's verbatim the town's local regulations. What we were talking about possibly to use the funds is a cash in lieu instead of a parkland dedication. So two separate elements there. The cash in lieu would be a fund, basically a letter, like a check that Dwayne would write out to the town that can be used for park and recreation funds, and Jerry or Paul can correct me on that, but that was where the funds would come from.
And I just wanted to make a point, the planning board did vote on those ordinances separately, or those variances. We voted whether to approve or deny separately, not
Right.
together.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for catching that, Jerry. And excuse the woodenness of our proceedings here. It's a new thing, honestly. The subdivision is new to this council largely, so.
Oh, yeah, no worries at all. My job is just to protect you guys, and I'm like, we want to dot the I's and cross the T's.
Right. Good. Thank you. With that information, we could take another motion if you want to handle. You don't think so, Dan? Sorry, I got a dirty look. Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, you've had an agenda item that you guys have voted on, and I mean, I guess this would be uncharted territory for
I got you.
ask.
Yeah.
Can you add something to the agenda and vote on the same item again in the same meeting?
Well, it just says Llewellyn Street subdivision. It doesn't really give us specifically what we're voting on in our agenda. Just could be a lot of things around that Llewellyn Street subdivision.
Yeah, it is true though.
Theoretically.
We did vote on those separately.
I guess I would agree with Jerry too, as far as voting on subdivision. But your findings of facts and conclusions, I mean, you would have to add in something about no variance now, I would think. Be a question for Jerry.
And if we're voting on that, that's something I haven't really read or researched or studied. I would probably want some time before I voted on it to make sure I'm up to speed on what we're asking to vote on.
So we're at a vapor lock, Jerry. We're stuck.
So I have an idea, but I have to say I am not the town's legal counsel, so that's my caveat. If someone could make a motion to rescind the previous vote on the variances and then take a vote individually on each variance and then do the final vote on the findings of fact and conditions of approval based upon how you decide on the variances.
Do you understand that?
Yeah, can we vote to table the third option? Back to that one?
In other words, vote to rescind that motion, to break that motion up.
Can we legally do that?
I think we can legally do that.
The only thing that I know of for sure is you cannot make a negative motion.
Robert's rules are here to serve us, not us serving them. What we want to get to is what the decision of the council truly is. And we're absolutely vote your conscience and your mind on that. But it is true that those were voted on separately, and you might want to vote on those variances separately if there is a difference. I'm not putting thoughts or words into your minds.
So I'll make a motion to rescind my motion that we deny the variances.
I'll second that then.
Okay, so I have a motion to rescind that and to take it back to table. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, is there a new motion on the table?
So we have to approve the findings. And then, is that a separate motion?
Yeah, I think you have to do the variances
And then the
first.
variant, or,
I think you said do the variances first, and then the facts
Yeah.
of fighting comes afterwards. So,
I would make a motion then to vote on the variance of the 30% rule. Is that
are you voting to
Is that
approve it,
correct?
or are we voting yea or nay to approve it?
to
or-
approve the 30%
Okay, sounds
variance on the 30% rule?
Okay, I'll second that.
Does that sound right, Chad?
I'm not a lawyer.
Well, I know.
I was the top. I was
Neither
a
am I.
lawyer.
Neither am I. I'm just.
Did you second that?
I did.
So I heard a movement to approve the variance on the 30% and a second. That is on the table. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that the motion passes to approve the variance on the 30%. Is there another motion on the table?
I'll make a motion that we deny the variance in regards to lot number 4 and its access as drawn up in this plan.
I second that.
Moved and seconded that we deny the variance to access lot number 4. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so, and then approving, other than that, the plat with that caveat, is that something that we would need to vote on, Jerry?
Yeah, so the next step, my recommendation would be is that someone would make a motion saying, we approve the findings of fact as originally presented to the planning board, and the conditions of approval as presented to the planning board, with the exception that, and I can, condition 9I and condition 21 would be deleted, because those two conditions dealt with the 30% ag land. Does that make sense?
Yes. It does to me, because you don't have the findings of fact in front of you right now on that.
I don't think I've ever seen it. So
So how do we condense that into a motion?
Sorry, yeah,
Can
yeah,
we
I'm
move to
gonna have
table
to.
it? I
That's
know
the-
he wants a vote. Can we table it and come back at a special meeting when I've had time to look at it, read it, and understand it before I vote on it?
I'm not sure that we can table this, can we? Because we're constrained by time. We need to make a vote on it.
Yeah, I think we're.
So what he's doing is he's eliminating the, accepting, go ahead.
Does everybody have a copy of the staff report and also the memo that I put together after the planning board?
It's not in your packet right now. Okay.
But
Those of you that don't have that, we can get that to you. We could even, I don't think we can make copies of that fast.
I don't have it, so I don't know.
How do we
I do.
condense the motion to one or two sentences or?
I think the condensation of it would be to approve the findings of fact and the conditions of approval on the subdivision. With the caveat of
The votes on the variances.
Oh, good.
that'd be good, yeah. Particularly 9.1 and 2.1. Sorry, we're waiting for copies.
No worries. No worries.
While we're getting copies, can we take a 2-minute break?
Yeah, well, let's take a 2-minute recess or a 5-minute recess while we're waiting for those copies.
Okay, not to be the bad guy here, but why is this our problem? He wants to buy the land, I don't understand this 30%
It's always our
thing.
problem.
So this 30% thing is saying that if somebody buys a lot and builds a house on it, we have to take care of their yard? That makes absolutely no sense.
Well,
We don't own the
no, if
property,
we
they
have the
would own the
30%,
property.
if we have the 30%, we have to take care of that 30%. Casey, is this a good time to let Jerry take a break and then bring him back up so we don't lose him again? Let's do that. Could you clarify that to him?
Yeah. Hey, Jerry.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna do a restart again, just so we get you back to questions. So when we come back, I'll see you. Alright,
good.
Alright, see you later.
And then my other question would be, when did they draw those plans? Did they draw those lots with that little tiny road right there?
No, they didn't. And that's what they're saying, that,
Why would you draw that without having access to that
I
lot?
don't know if anybody's ever paid attention to what happens with easements in the state, but easements in the state are not as easy as everybody thinks they are. And the easements end up being a major problem, and if they don't fix it, whoever buys that lot back there might run into the same thing that a lot of people do.
No, it's true. It's better to actually have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because if you're hoping that somebody's gonna give you an easement, they don't have to.
That's right. And how is that a hardship?
Yeah, it's not a hardship.
They should have built that plan with the access to that road, not going, oh yeah, we might need a variance later on. No, you build it in there, access to that property. You don't think about it later.
I think not setting a precedence that the town is willing to give variances out like candy.
I still don't see how this 2 makes any work. I just don't.
If it falls on the town's table to pay for it.
I've been taking algebra like crazy, honey, lemon, hot cheese. This just won't stop.
And I'll tell you, right now it won't last. And if they're running big machinery and big trucks down that road.
Okay, so we fix the road and they clear it up.
Well, if that's the case, then they have to be fixed and put it back the way it was.
And if we don't fix it, then it ain't gonna be a road by the time we get there. So it's going to be you're coming out of the school, we'll still have that one-way out to 200. So they're talking about taking part of that road from 200 up to their.
So they'd have to do like a concrete jersey barrier block.
Okay, but how are they gonna get out?
Because they'll come out and be able to turn right and go down. They can only make a right-hand turn now and go down.
That's my idea. This is gonna be.
You know what they should have done is they should have went to the hospital and said, hey, we have access on the back side.
That would be perfect.
Because that wouldn't be on the
Right? And they never use that road anyway.
And $500,000 to $600,000 homes in place.
Really? Who's gonna buy those? People from California.
We're gonna make them affordable.
That's not affordable. That's affordable to California. Maybe a $200,000 home.
Yeah, I was thinking like 350, 400,000.
Right? Yeah, not.
$500 million homes in place.
Yeah, no thank you. That's not gonna work. We're gonna be attracting Californians. Good for him for wanting to develop. Okay, great.
But you know what? Back in town, don't do so many make the
Right?
less homes.
They ain't gonna be family friendly. Not at that price. Maybe. Can't tell me they make that much either. Yeah, I don't understand that whole 30% thing. That is actually.
It would make sense if it was a large section of land that they were subdividing.
Like if
Like if it was 500 acres or 1,000 acres, and they said, okay, you have to leave 30% of 1,000 acres untouched, that would make more sense because then you can share profit or you can sell
Yeah, but
these.
still, if somebody buys their land, it's up to them what they wanna do with it. Why do we have a say in what they do with their property?
It's, like you said, it's very odd for a municipality to have that as an ordinance.
We don't have that kind of property
We don't
in
have
town.
that type of property in town, there's none left. You're doing a great job.
No, I'm not.
Okay, can we wrap this up now? It's past my bedtime here.
This is payback for all the half-hour meetings I've given you.
She said maybe you would want this. If you do, I want it back.
I don't need this because you're my brain trust in this. They don't actually give us square footage on that though.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, 28. I think they can still get under 25 though, that's a corner.
But what I don't understand is why would you put a lot right here and not have a road to it?
See, what they just need to do is make this deeded rather than.
Yeah, I don't get it.
Just adjust the lines.
Well, hopefully Jerry knows how we can do this.
I let it go out there. Thanks for your great building.
I'm gonna bring this back to order if we can get Jerry back because we may need his help in working through this. I'll go ahead and bring us back to order. And thank you for your patience on this. It's been a long, hard slog with the planning board as well on some of these questions. We want to make sure that we, first of all, stay within our confines of time in getting this approved because we've already been given a month extension on this. And we're at the end of it here. So what I'd like to do is Jerry up there.
We'll get him back in a second.
Let's bring him back in.
So we're talking about the highlighted here.
Who's that guy up there?
That's some grizzly bear.
Okay, we're back, Jerry. So now, and you could do a screenshot too if that's not complicated, but we do have that in front of us now and reference.
So, because you denied the variance on the access variance request, condition number 9, capital H, and condition 22 will remain. 15 will remain as conditions of approval. Condition 23 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 24 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 25 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 26 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 27 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 28 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 29 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 30 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 31 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 32 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 33 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 34 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 35 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 36 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 37 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 38 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 39 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition 40 will remain as conditions of approval. And condition And because you granted the variance from the 30% for the agricultural soils, condition number 9, capital I, and condition number 21, those would be deleted from the list of conditions. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, 9 capital I and condition 21.
Okay, yeah. Let me.
So does this then, the money that was a check for this, from the developer, would that be then presented as a part of this or not? Or how does that work?
Tamara, did you hear that question?
I did not, sorry.
Oh, you mentioned that, a check for the 30% condition being.
Yes, so I believe there's one or two prior conditions. Okay, let me bring it up here. So there's a condition number, I think it's 22 or so. 20. There's another condition in here that specifically calls out the state requirement for cash in lieu.
Okay.
So that's completely separate than the one that you're voting on here tonight.
The answer is yes, the check will be, the condition requirement for a check is included.
So check will be in there.
Okay, so if we approve this part of the variance, there
So
will be.
15 inch.
Oh, there we go. Cash in, okay, fine. Cool.
So I think you know what the will of the council is, Jerry. If you could place that in a motion for that could be repeated because it is confusing with the.
Yep, I'd be happy to do that. So the motion would, whoever wants to make the motion, it would be, I make a motion that we grant preliminary plat approval to the Llewellyn Street subdivision based upon 21 conditions of approval with the deletion of condition 9I and condition 22.
21.
21, right?
Or sorry, 21.
Okay, yeah. With the deletion of 9I and 21.
Yes.
Okay, now if anybody can get that out.
Chad was writing it down.
We got
I know what he said.
You gotta say it.
I so moved, what he just said.
Do you all understand it? So, go ahead.
So I'll make the motion that we adopt the proposed findings of fact, conclusions, and conditions of approval of the preliminary plat for the Llewellyn Street major subdivision for the 10 lots with the deletion of 9I and 21.
I'll second.
Now I think we all know what that means. Did that sound right to you, Jerry?
That was perfect.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is there a second? I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's a second.
A second.
Do you want a
Okay.
voice on this one?
Let's get a voice vote on it, please.
Chad,
Yes.
JD,
Yes.
Lana,
Yes.
sorry. John D,
Yes.
John R.
Yes.
John S.
Yes.
Not bad for a cop.
Holy moly.
All right, that motion passes.
Thank you, everybody, and I apologize for slowing things down. I know you have a lot to do, but I just wanted to make sure that this part was done right.
Right, no, and I thank you for that, because what this does, as I understand, is this gives IMEG something to do and gives the developer a direction to go and to know what the will of this council is.
Yep, exactly. It's essentially a contract between the town and the developer.
Okay. All right. Can we move on?
Please do.
Let's, we have
Right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for helping us with that, really. And thank you, Paul and Tamara. Safe travels. We have 2 more points please, 5 more minutes if we can. We have another piece of new business. Thank you for that. Another piece of new business to appoint Brooke Booth to Parks and Recreation Committee.
I move that we appoint Brooke Booth to the Parks and Rec Committee.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Congratulations, Brooke. Thank you for your willingness to serve in that capacity. One more piece of new business to renew the engineer contract with Sherry Johnson for another 2 years. Keep her on
I would
retainer.
make a motion to renew Sherry Johnson, is it?
Yes.
Contract for another 2 years.
I second that.
Moved and seconded that we retain Sherry Johnson as the town engineer. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We have, I don't think we have it. We don't have a Public Works Committee report. We don't have an Administration Committee. Parks and Recreation, do we have anything from Parks and Rec?
You pretty much went over it.
Okay.
At the beginning about the statute, so we're working
Okay.
on. Yeah. It's still in planning.
Very good, thank you. Police Commission?
Nothing.
Nothing? No Safety Committee this month. Is there any other public comment?
Shut up, Danny.
Order. Dan.
I would just say subdivision is very tricky, and it's difficult if you don't, if it's not something you deal with all the time. I'm a little unclear about the process that you guys just went through. In Sandwich County, if there's a variance request denied, Jerry was right, that you have to make the land planner in Sandwich County case makes a determination whether it is significant or not. If it's not significant, it can move forward, but that takes a determination at the time, usually before it comes to the governing body for approval. You guys removed a couple of conditions of approval, but with the variance failing, there was nothing added to it to address that shortcoming or deficiency, if you will. And I will say the same thing that Jerry said. I'm not an attorney, but it seemed, and you certainly were under time constraints. But I don't know how you address that on the fly without having an attorney at your meetings, which is probably impossible. But it's done now, because one thing Jerry's right at, you now have a contract with the developer, and there's no adding to that or taking away from it. When he meets the conditions of approval as laid out, he will have a subdivision, and when it comes back from final, it will be essentially a rubber stamp. So,
Well, I think if they fix the easement problem, bring that out, I mean, I think that was the big concern, and am I wrong in saying that I think the biggest concern here was obeying our own ordinance? I think we're all right. We were all fine with a win-win for the subdivision. We certainly have complications of the road, which comes back on us. Looking at the last proposal for the subdivision on that same land, that was a nightmare. There were 30 lots on it. So, you know, it's a new process for all of us, and thank you for all the misery of going through it with us.
Well,
But,
and just to expound, lot 4, in being in compliance with our ordinance, was the issue.
Right.
You know, and if that's addressed, the council has acted in good faith to move this forward, as disjointed and painful as it may have been.
Right?
I would just point out again, Jerry didn't answer the question, and Corey and I spoke some about the 1 to 3 with the depth ratio. Of course, they couldn't find it. I don't remember where it's at offhand, but I do know that in one of the letters from your town engineer, that is one of the points she addressed on previous subdivision applications, which that part would not have changed. So, again, it would be worth reviewing and updating our subdivision regs. I guess would be ultimately the thing that you guys would need to do.
well, we are not entirely out of the woods yet on this. There's still obviously things, you know, work with IMEG to do. It's been a really difficult process. This hit us without a planning board, and it's been a long process, and stuff that most of us, I mean, these engineers have one job. We don't. I don't know what I'm doing on this. We've all been learning very aggressively, trying to figure it out, and it was a painful process, but a fun process. Hey, so
Fun?
no, it was fun. I'd say it was
My
fun.
5-minute break was fun.
No, thank you for your patience. Thank you for your patience in it. This is how we get work done. I think everybody got their opportunity to speak to it. And it'll be nice to get it fixed. We do want to go over those ordinances, something the planning board has been talking about the whole time, because this won't be the last.
Yeah.
But hopefully for a while it will be. So.
I mean, we need housing, right? We're
Yeah,
short
we
supply,
do,
so-
we do, and that's something we have to consider too. Town's gonna grow. I would take a motion to adjourn. All right.
Knew that was coming.
Have a swell night. Hey, it's before 9 o'clock.
Water, some has a flavor.
Can I get a copy of those 2 letters? One's you read? Take a picture of Kathy.
No, you're welcome. Have a great night.